Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, where we go across country and travel the world with members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. Let's go. Welcome, everyone. Very excited. You know, every second Tuesday, we get to chat with one of the members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association, who we call IFWTWA. It's easier to say, and you can go to IFWTWA.org to learn more. And today we are going to Indonesia. We may stop in Bali, but we're going beyond Bali. And we have Inga Aksamit joining us. Did I say your name correctly? I mean, I should have asked.
It's close. Aksamit is good.
Aksamit. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a different accent. And,
Absolutely.
I lived in different places, like you, who've lived in different countries.
Yeah.
So now it's one big melting pot.
Absolutely.
Other people keep their languages and know what they're saying. And now it's just, I have my own language. That's how I look at it. But yeah, so growing up, did that get you, like, going in all these different countries and living outside the U.S., is that part of what got you to become a travel writer and an author? Because you're also an award-winning author with some awesome books that we'll talk about too on the show. But did that kind of, like, once you start doing that and as a kid, it's hard to stop?
Right. I have continued to travel throughout my adult life, and I love international travel. And my mom became a travel writer in her kind of mid to later years. And I thought it looked like a lot of fun. And I had a regular job in corporate America, but I started doing some travel writing maybe about 10 years before I retired, thinking it would be a fun thing to do after I retired. And then I just kind of ended up doing two jobs at once because I enjoyed it so much. But yes, I definitely think all the traveling as a child prepared me for that.
Yeah, so now you write, and everyone can go to your website to keep up with you on social media too. It's ingasadventures.com. It's linked in the episode notes. And also she's got an article on medium.com that is linked in there that also gets you to it's all about the islands in Indonesia and where to go besides Bali. Not knocking Bali, but it's always good to go somewhere else. But also you were a nurse, an oncology nurse. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. And as I said, an award-winning author, and you also speak. So, and your public speaking, is that mostly on travel as well?
Yeah, travel as well as I've been doing a lot this year for the most recent book called Between Worlds: An Expat's Quest for Belonging. That's all about my expat childhood. And so I've been having a lot of fun doing programs related to the book.
Oh man, and you've got highs and lows on the John Muir Trail. That's an epic
Hmm.
trail. And then
Yeah.
the Hungry Spork. You've got two. This is about, it's like a recipe guide for people that go backpacking.
Yes, yes. So after I wrote Highs and Lows on the John Muir Trail, which is a 211-mile trail, we spent 23 nights in a tent on that trail in the wilderness. And when I wrote that book, a lot of people had questions about how we ate, how we procured our food for all that time, and how we carried it. And so I wrote the first Hungry Spork book to help long distance backpackers. And I had a few recipes, and then I kept developing recipes. I just couldn't stop myself. Every time I looked at a recipe, I would figure out how I could do it with dried ingredients, and finally realized I had enough new recipes for a whole new book. So that's been fun and really popular.
And also understanding that you're in a different, like, elevation too as
Hmm.
you travel. That's
Right. High
another thing, isn't it?
elevation. Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So all the hard work was done at home, preparing the meals out of dried ingredients. And then all we did on the trail was add hot water, which was very welcome after hiking 10 or 15 miles with a pack on our back at elevation.
Yeah, I mean, the elevation can be brutal. It's,
Definitely.
yeah, I mean, we just went from, like almost zero to Colorado
Hmm.
thousands. And suddenly I'm like, "Oop, okay, more water and a good excuse for chocolate,"
Yeah.
as
Little
I always
bit
say
of
it's a good ex.
little short of breath going up the hills.
Yeah, I'm just like, "What happened?" I know I went over 50 and everything went crazy. But this is a little much. Yeah, you just kind of, you have to remember that it
Hmm.
happens, but
Hmm.
yeah, sustenance is good, and pacing yourself when you go to places like Peru,
Hmm.
like some of our friends, I know Sharon Kurtz, also a member of IFWTWA, she was saying that when she went to Peru before they
Hmm.
started really doing the hike, into Machu Picchu and all of that, they stay down low in the cities just to get a little bit acclimated, you know.
Right, right. Going from
Mm,
sea level to Cusco is really rough. It's over 11,000 feet. And so that's a huge jump that most tourists do because they fly into Lima and then hop right up there. So it's a good idea actually to leave Cusco immediately and go down a little bit lower because Machu Picchu is lower.
mhm.
And then adjust, do the hike, and then come back up to Cusco and do your sightseeing up there.
Huh. Interesting. Very cool. Good information. I'm telling you, I love this. With IFWTWA, we always get good tips, not
Yeah.
just like ideas and inspiration, you know. But now let's talk about Indonesia because I didn't even, when I was reading what you'd written, your article, I was like, you know, I didn't even think about how many little
Mhm.
islands are out there. So, and a lot of people just always keep going to Bali and just kind of get into that pathway, whereas you're going, no, you can go here, you can go there. So you've got what is it, 8 different, islands?
Yes, I keep, changing how I count them because some are
There's
so close together.
17,000.
There's 17,000 islands total. Some of them are tiny, like the ones behind you, and others are pretty big. We took a train from Jakarta to Yogyakarta, which is only in central Java, and the train took 8 hours. So, some of the islands are quite large, but many are small, and only about 6,000 are inhabited. So,
Mm,
yes, I winnowed that down to about 8 different islands that are kind of the major destinations beyond Bali for tourists.
mhm. And when we look at, you know, as an overview, it seems like there's so much to experience, like from orangutans. Are you kidding me?
Mhm.
I mean, I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, this is so the nature and the national parks. That's
Mhm.
something we do. We travel full time documenting our parks and we're recording this on the anniversary of our national park system here in the US. So
Oh,
I
great.
think it's appropriate to talk about parks. But yeah, I wonder how many people go, oh, I didn't know about national parks in Indonesia and what you can, I mean, that's amazing to be able to see orangutans and Komodo dragons. And I mean,
Right,
this
right.
is cool.
Yeah, so, and if you laid all the islands out across the United States, it would be wider than the United States. It wouldn't quite reach to Hawaii, but it would reach well into the Pacific. And so, yeah, it's important to kind of figure out the geography first and look at where some of the features are. Like the orangutans are way over on the western end of the island chain in Sumatra and Kalimantan. So if you fly into Jakarta, those are really close destinations for that area. And then the Komodos are more in the central part of the island chain, and that's also part of a national park. And so the orangutans are they're on preserves in national parks, and there's a whole bunch more in Java and other places. So there's a lot to see.
Well, you say to really look at what you want to experience
Mhm.
before not don't just start planning, oh, I'm going to go here, here, here. Kind of look at what you want out of your trip because it is like a 20-hour flight from the United States, right?
Yes. It's so far. So you really wanna make it worth it and do things that are aligned with your interests. And so when I talk to people about where they can go outside of Bali, that I like to ask people what they like to do. Some people go to Bali because of the beaches, and there are many, many beaches. So the places I would recommend there would be, on Sumatra, you can see the orangutans and also take advantage of some spectacular beaches. A far tip, like kilometer zero, where the
Hmm.
whole island chain starts, is an area in the Aceh area that has beautiful beaches, and the island of Nias in that area as well. Java itself has wonderful beaches, and then the beaches around the Komodo chain.
Hmm.
Not only can you see the dragons, but you can also do some amazing snorkeling. So beach people, I have specific recommendations for them. People who are really into nature, like we already talked about the Komodos and the orangutans,
Yeah.
Sumatra, Kalimantan, the Komodos. Some people are very interested in culture. I love exploring all the different cultural aspects of Indonesia. And one of the fascinating things is that each island is so unique. There is usually a predominant religion on each of the islands, and
Uh-huh.
it could be Islam, it could be Buddhism, it could be um, Christianity, And so Hinduism was big at one time. And so you can see lots and lots of different temples. And there's
Cool.
still a little bit of animism mixed in.
Mm.
And Indonesians were very flexible about taking aspects of different religions and not being too discriminatory. So culture is
That's
very
fun.
interesting. So Java is kind of ground zero for cultural aspects, as well as Bali. I think that's one of the things
Mhm.
that appeals to people about Bali. Is it's such a small island. It has great beaches, a great party scene, but it also has really interesting culture.
Mm. That the culture part is really cool because, especially being able to
Mm.
see, these monuments and these temples and
Hmm.
getting to understand what, if you can take a tour, are there tour guides that will take you and explain what you're
Hmm.
seeing? Because so often we
Absolutely.
go to these temples and it's like,
Hmm.
wow, this is amazing. But do you
Hmm.
know what you're looking at and why it's there and the work that went into it? Because when they construct these amazing, pieces of architecture and faith, a lot of times there's a lot of work and creativity that goes into it, and things are positioned according to beliefs and all kinds of things.
Yes. In fact, the Borobudur temple, which is Buddhist, was built in the 8th century, and it's comparable to Angkor Wat, which is
Wow.
better known. And I've been there 3 times. I went once with my mom in the 70s, and then another time I took some friends when I was in my early 20s. I took them, and so that would have been in the 80s, and then I just took my husband and my best friend to Borobudur, and for the first time, I got a guide. I think in my 20s, I didn't think I could afford it, even though it was probably only a few dollars. But I got a guide for the first time, and my goodness, every single panel tells a story, and
Yeah.
this temple is enormous. So there are definitely guides, English-speaking guides. Even back in the 70s, we could usually find some people who spoke English, but now anybody in the tourism industry provides the tours in not only English, but many other languages. So that's one thing I've noticed over the decades is that travel is much easier in Indonesia, partly because so many people speak English. They become more sophisticated with how to offer services and meet the expectations of discerning travelers.
Mm.
And so, it's lost a little bit of the rugged aspect, but definitely makes it more accessible. And that interpretation I find is so important.
Yeah, no, no. I think that's the, you get to know a culture better, and especially because the
Hmm.
guides are from there, they
Hmm.
know that, and
Hmm.
you get to learn and have more of a personal connection. And as you're saying, with tourism coming in, what are the lodgings like? I know somebody
Hmm.
who, used to like live on a little hut in a beach,
Hmm.
you know, and enjoy her days like that. So is it still kind of like that?
You can find that, but it's increasingly harder to find. So when I went to Bali in the 70s, there was only electricity at the airport, and we lived in little family-run lodgings that might have had 4 or 5 rooms on the beach. And so obviously it's not like that anymore in Bali.
That's
And
fun.
it was really, really fun. So, it loses a little, but it gains a little. So I'm
Mm.
not one to
Yeah.
ruminate on what's been lost. But I did travel to Flores this past time and found that some of that old style is still there, more small lodging, but increasingly there's the whole range. So you can find backpacker hostels all the way to 5-star luxury places that can compete with any place around the world. And so that's one thing that's made travel more accessible is that
Mhm.
people can find the lodging that makes them feel more comfortable. And that's
According to
important
their
as
needs.
well, according to
Yeah,
their
yeah.
needs. So people who are older, for example, or maybe have some mobility issues, it's gotten easier for them to get around as well. But the
Which is wonderful.
backpackers can still find the rugged lodging that isn't very expensive.
That's cool. And it's, progress is always going to happen. And who are we to say, no, electricity for you? It may have been fun at a certain point, but you don't want it every single day like that.
Right,
But,
right.
and speaking of progress and change, we've got all these little islands. And when we look at travel and being sustainable travelers and being respectful, and that's something too, and you put that in your articles too about being respectful of the cultures and
Mhm.
have a little understanding and, you're in someone else's home, basically. But the
Right.
islands are, when we look at climate change, really in we need to protect them. Let's put it that. I know the
Mhm.
islands are going, "Hey, y'all, can you stop it over there so that over here we can still survive and do things?" So when you're there, are you seeing any signs of them trying to change things or wanting us to, or even having that kind of dialogue?
Yes, I think there is increasing concern from the local citizens themselves about what's happening to their islands. And so I am seeing that there is attention being paid to that. So, for one thing, for me, I was a little disappointed to see some of the erosion happening on Kuta Beach in Bali. And part of that was because of having to increase the length of the runway, which is very close to Kuta Beach, to accommodate the larger jets. That's why people can
Oh,
now fly directly to Bali instead of
mhm,
always having to go through Jakarta. But that changed the currents and the flows. And so I think there's more attention being paid to things like that. And Raja Ampat, which is still a very, very underdeveloped area and still has a lot of tribal influences, but they're doing a lot of nickel mining, and so some of the runoff from that can be dangerous to some of the marine sea life there. And they have
mm,
some of the richest biodiversity in the world in Raja Ampat. And so the area there around West Papua is getting a lot of attention right now from the people who live there that are saying, hey, wait a minute, we want development, we want to improve our standard of living, but let's also protect our environment. And I'm
mhm.
seeing more of a focus on the plastic bottles, for example. So now in a lot of hotels and some of the places when we went on a boat to Komodo, we were provided with metal water bottles and they had filtered water in large jugs that could be replenished. And so instead of just having cases and cases of the plastic bottles, there's a lot more attention for things like that. So I appreciate
Great.
that. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I mean, because this is a global conversation and
Mm,
shouldn't be just conversation, actions too.
right.
And that's important. And, talking about the coastal, I mean, I know a lot of people want to be beach bums, but I mean, of course, it's cool to do for a day or two, but being able to go snorkeling in
Mhm.
coral reefs, are they also looking at that too? Because some,
Mhm.
areas may be sensitive or they may be, because am I wrong in that I thought there's an area out there where they're really working on redeveloping the coral reef. I may have my islands messed up. That's easy
Um,
for
well,
me.
in Raja Ampat, it's still very healthy in general. I understand there is some bleaching that has occurred in some areas. I didn't actually see that this time. I was there for 7 days, so I didn't get to see all of the little islands in that area, but everything was very, very healthy, where we were very vibrant and colorful and just so many fish. It's just incredible. So there is work being done to rehabilitate some of the coral reefs that have been damaged. And I saw some of the metal grates that they're putting down around some of the coral reefs along the shores that have been impacted by some of the development to encourage the coral to regenerate. So there is work. I'm sure it's never enough. And we still need to keep attention focused on it to make sure that that we can do as much as we can to protect the environment.
The coral reefs are just so magical, right? I mean, it's just,
Mm,
I think we sometimes forget that as, nature lovers. I
mm,
mean, it's just like, it's insane. I mean, you can go to an IMAX movie and that's insane, but actually doing it
mm.
and being in the water and seeing these just beautiful, the colors. I mean, to me, it's like, who needs drugs?
I know. This was
It's
the first
like,
time I've
wow.
done this is the first time I've done a liveaboard where you're on the boat for 3 or 4 days. And we also did a one of the overwater bungalows. So we did the liveaboard in Komodos and then we went to Raja Ampat for the bungalows. And so it was the first time I've ever been doing something as immersive as the snorkeling we were doing. I've done snorkeling in Hawaii and you see a few fish here and there and some turtles and it's really cool. But this was next level, like being dropped into an aquarium, which is crazy, right? Because the aquarium is an artificial environment that is
Yeah.
mimicking what we were experiencing. But each day we would go to 2 or 3 different sites, and every time we got in the water, it was like seeing amazing IMAX movie type
Yeah.
film and different fish. We'd be like 10 minutes away on the other side of the strait, and it would be completely different fish and different coral. And so it just blew my mind and woke me up to what is available out there.
Mm.
And so now I'm newly in love with that kind of snorkeling, and just want to do as much as I can. So an amazing experience. And going to Flores or the Komodo Islands is a really short flight from Bali. It's a little bit, I think it's a little bit less than an hour. And so to be so close and be so accessible, not only to the Komodos, but also you can also fly north to Sulawesi. And up at
Mhm.
the northern part of that is the western end of the Coral Triangle, this amazingly biodiverse area. So Raja Ampat is on the east and Sulawesi is on the west, and it kind of cups this area. And so these are really, really accessible to people who may want to add on to a Bali trip, for example.
Yeah, so it's like you don't it just is diverse your time, get more out of these islands when you
Hmm.
travel. If you're going to go that far to go to Bali, take a couple days and go to some of the other islands and experience that. But I want the bungalow on the water. I don't think I'd leave. I'd be like, let's go down and see who's there. It's like, do they have glass bottom boats? I remember doing that as a kid when we lived in
Um,
Kenya.
I didn't see any of those there. They probably have them in some of the other areas, but everybody staying at this resort was there to either snorkel or dive. So we
Oh,
were we were getting in the water 3 times a day.
it's awesome. It is. And the water's
Yeah.
warm.
Oh my gosh, it's so warm. Almost all of Indonesia is kind of straddling the equator, so it was
Yeah.
very, very warm. And there were times when I felt like it was almost like you got the bath water a little too hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we weren't needing to wear wetsuits or anything. We just wore thin leggings and just to keep from getting sunburned. But the water is just so beautiful to slip into. And the place we stayed had a house reef as well. So if you didn't want to go out in the boat, as much, twice a day, you could just go out on the house reef, and it was incredible. I saw so many amazing fish that I had never seen before right there, right off the dock. So,
Now, are
and
there people who can teach you what you're seeing? Like, is there a way to figure it
we
out?
had guides for both on the boat and the overwater bungalows. The bungalow place had several different boats, and so they would have like 8 different trips a day. So divers could go on one, snorkelers on the other, or
Mhm.
sometimes it was a little bit mixed. But everybody had a guide, and so the guide could interpret for us and also keep us safe. And then same thing on the boat. We had the boatman, a guide, who knew what to look for and would kind of herd us around and shepherd us around, like over here, over here, and then a videographer. So we kind of had all the all the luxuries
That's
on
amazing.
those. But I wanted to also say, another reason for exploring some of these islands is to relieve some of the pressure on a place like Bali, because everybody goes to Bali because it's amazing, but so are all these other places. And so we don't all have to go to one tiny island and make the traffic so horrible. If we spread out a little bit, we can see even more incredible things. And
Yeah, it's creating some balance.
yeah,
It's like just now you're going to be on shuttles. Everything's a shuttle. Like what
right,
we have to do in our parks. It's like too many people. It's not fun for everyone when it gets overwhelming like that. So,
right.
yeah, no, no, and it's helping the economy in
Hmm.
the other islands too,
Hmm.
which is really, that's the thing is, being travelers, we're temporarily part of a community when we go
Right,
there and should treat it as such, I think, that way.
right,
You're in someone's
right.
house, you were their guests and to be respectful, but also know that we're putting back in. And so we have, and you want to keep going there. I
Hmm.
do. I want to go again, and I haven't even been there yet. It just reminds me of Kenya. We used to at Mombasa and going snorkeling as a kid out there, and having to watch out for moray eels and not
Hmm.
don't don't put we did use, this is way back when. Now, sneakers is what you call them in this country. My language just went to another country. But we call them tackies there, so I don't
Oh, okay.
but anyway, but you'd have to wear, like, little tennis shoes so that
Uh,
if you step down, you
uh-huh.
don't step on an urchin or, 'cause
Right. In Peru, we had, stingrays, and so we had to swim
oh,
in these enclosures like they have in Australia as well. They're three-sided metal, like, chicken wire kinda things to provide a safe swimming space, and then outside in the open ocean were the stingrays. So, kind of a similar thing where you kinda have to be aware of what's in the water with you.
South Africa, we have cages because there's great white sharks.
Yeah, right, right,
That's what we had
exactly.
there. It's like, okay. No, but I don't know. We have to go out and swim too. I've been out with hammerhead sharks circling us in a dinghy
Mm,
and you know what? They're actually not mean. They're actually pretty docile, but no,
uh, kinda
no.
raises your blood pressure a little.
Just a little because it's crazy, that's an
Yeah.
amazing thing to experience, but I think there is a fear of what's under the water, and when you start to snorkel and have these experiences, that it helps alleviate the fear and have more appreciation for a whole new
Mhm.
world
Mhm.
that gets left out of a conversation often.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I'm backpacking, a lot of people are very afraid of bears, but our black bears are not very dangerous at all as long as you protect your food. And so
Mhm,
just learning that, seeing how scared they are when they see you kind of,
mm.
reinforces how we're all just here trying to make it,
Yeah, just
make it through
have
the day.
respect. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So now I was gonna ask you, so going over there, so all kinds of lodgings, boats included, bungalows, cabins, the big, 5-star resorts, like you're saying. I'm sure there's plenty of glamping out there, which is pretty cool for folks. But what about food? Because of this diversity, this cultural diversity, and
Mhm.
then, I'm sure seafood is a big deal. So is that the main dishes? I mean,
There's a wide variety. It's not just seafood, but in the coastal areas, there is amazing seafood. But I remember even in the 70s, we ate, turtle. Turtle used to be pretty common. Now it's, not common, and that's probably a good thing. Um, but, there's beef in areas and, chicken, lots of chicken. And so, for people who don't like seafood, I don't want them to feel like they're not gonna find anything to eat. There's
I'm
plenty to
allergic
eat.
to it, so I'm glad to hear that
Yeah, yeah,
because it's
there's
actually a
plenty.
scary thing to go to
Yeah,
places that
absolutely.
everything's seafood, yeah.
And then one of the things I love about the food in Indonesia is that each island has its own specialties, its own, kinda quirks with, spices and how hot
Mhm,
things are and how mild things
mhm,
are, and just different dishes that are, particular to that region or to that island. And so every island is a new adventure. So for foodies, it's not like you get there and you eat the same 3 things, all through the 6,000 islands. And so in the past, it was pretty spicy. It was an area that was known for their hot peppers, especially in Lombok, which means pepper. But one of the things that I've noticed this year more than any other time I've been there is that they seem to have gotten the message about travelers. And so it's much more common now for waiters to ask the level of spice. And I was traveling with somebody who can't tolerate spice, and she was able to get things that were very bland, sometimes even too bland. She's like, "Well, they could have put a little something in it." So she learned to kinda gauge what she wanted. But I really like spicy, aromatic food. And yeah, yeah. So the other thing I noticed this time, especially in Bali and in Java, which get the most tourists, is a lot more international food. And so for me, it's not so important. I could go a month and eat nothing but Indonesian food. But for the people I was traveling with, they appreciated a meal now and then that was Italian or kind of regular old American. And so everything is available now in those major areas.
mhm,
The boat that we were on and the over overwater bungalows were high end, and they had a wide variety of food and could accommodate a lot of different things.
mm,
If you're staying in a homestay, especially out in, Flores, on the inland parts or West Papua, it might be a little bit more limited, but in the major islands, Sulawesi, Sumatra, Java, Bali, Lombok. you can get a wide variety of food. So I wouldn't think that
Mm.
food would be a problem for just about anyone.
Well, the other thing, what about fresh fruit? It just seems like
Hmm.
the fruit and
Oh, lots.
vegetables has to
Oh,
be
amazing.
abundant. Yeah.
Amazing. And it's all the tropical fruits that we're
Mm,
starting to see more of in the States, but but they taste amazing there because they're so flavorful. And so fruits and vegetables are
mm,
plentiful. Rice, of course, is very common. Noodles as well. There's been a heavy influence from Chinese people that have settled in Indonesia for a very long time. So there are some Chinese aspects to food that have been incorporated into the traditional
mm,
dishes. So
mm.
there's always been a wide variety. A
Now,
lot of
the other thing,
coconut milk. So
oh, that's good.
some dishes are similar to what people are familiar with from Thai restaurants. So yeah, there's some familiar flavors there.
That's cool. It just seems so healthy.
Hmm.
It just seems light, like you're out in the outdoors. It
Hmm.
just seems like a very, quality of life, it seems
Yeah,
to be
it
on the high.
generally
Yeah, it seems like a happy place. And when you're at the beach, you're always, the beaches are happy places.
they are.
Even there's some doom and gloom kind of, the big rocky waves, there's
Uh,
certain those dramatic coastlines too, which are
yeah.
cool too. It's just every time I'm on a beach or I always go, I'm standing on the edge of the world, but I'm not a flat earther, y'all. Don't even start me on that. We were talking about the temples and, all these spiritual places, very historic. And what about museums, those
Mhm.
kinds of places for folks to go? I always say it's really great to go to a museum even before you set out
Mhm.
sometimes, so you have a little bit more understanding about where you're treading
Yeah, I'm really glad
or
you brought that up.
flipping through with your
Yeah. Um, I think with the access of Bali, it's become a little bit less common maybe for people to go through Jakarta, which they used to always have to do. And Jakarta has some amazing museums. And so I hadn't been back to Jakarta in a couple of decades. And this time when I was planning the trip, I told my friends, it's like, I hope you don't mind, but I really want to spend a few days in Jakarta and see where my parents lived, where I used to visit them, and also to see some of the museums. And I think it was so helpful for them to see, to get grounded in the
Mhm.
history a little bit and start getting introduced to some of the things that they saw all throughout the trip. And so the National Museum in Jakarta is highly recommended. And then there's an area called Old Town, which is where the old Dutch colonial buildings are. And
Okay.
there's a whole bunch of different museums. So once you get out there, it's a little bit of a drive from the central part of Jakarta, maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes in bad traffic. There are a museum that's called the Wayang Museum. The Wayangs are the puppets that are used. They have flat shadow puppets, or they have some carved puppets. And they also do what they call human wayang, which would be like ballet, more like a dance. And so this museum is so great because it has everything. It has all the different forms of wayang in there, and is something that you'll see all throughout the islands in different forms. And so my friends were able to recognize when they were seeing, oh, there's the wayang kulit, there's the wayang orang. And we also ended up seeing a performance in Yogyakarta. And so they were already kind of primed for that. And then there's a history museum there that goes through the colonial history, and that's important to understand. It's a big part of Indonesian history. So I think stopping in Jakarta in the beginning and taking advantage of some of the museums while you get over jet lag, get introduced to some of the food. It's actually a beautiful city now. It's very modern in the core, and traffic is heavy, but it's organized, and we all were really impressed with the city. So I highly recommend that.
That's
And
good
then
to know.
one area
Yeah.
that I didn't mention yet is are people who like adventure and physical things. One thing about Indonesia is that it's volcanic. It's part of that
Mhm.
ring of fire. So there's often a volcano blowing somewhere in the islands, and that provides lots of opportunities for mountain climbing. So for people who are like trekking or climbing to the tops of volcanoes, there's a number of opportunities on different islands to do that, including some pretty big names like Krakatoa that blew a
Oh,
long time ago and created a hazy atmosphere all around the world. That's
mm.
another thing to put on your list if you are interested in doing something kind of rigorous.
Yeah. I mean, because yeah, you're gonna go up, but it's like
Yeah.
Yeah, just look at like Sumatra, Java, Kalimantan. I can't pronounce that.
Kalimantan. Yeah, Kalimantan.
Kalimantan and
Mhm.
West Papua Raja Ampat. The Gili Islands. Is it Gili or Gili?
Gili.
Gili Islands and Lombok. I mean, this is things that you've seen the name somewhere. If you look on a
Mhm.
globe, right? You see
Mhm.
that and you go, okay. Getting around, that was something you were talking about traffic I wanted to touch on because
Mhm.
getting around, would you rent a car on an island and drive around, or do you get
I
little,
would not usually sign up to rent a car, and we do rent cars. We've rented cars in Alaska and, well, that's in the States, but all through Europe, we've rented cars. And I don't usually want to rent a car there because traffic can be pretty bad. And, most people aren't going to know the language at
Mhm.
all. So, there's no foundation, because it's not like Spanish or like
Okay,
Italian
so
or
yeah.
or French or anything like that. So I would, and also it's not that expensive to travel around
Mhm.
using ground transportation or even hiring a driver in a car. It's just not that expensive. Not like it would be in Europe or the States. And so for us, we used the train the one time, which was beautiful. I highly recommend the day-long train from Jakarta to Yogyakarta. It's a great way to see the countryside and see the changing terrain. It goes from flat with lots of rice paddies up into the mountains, and then
Nice.
surrounded by the sea, of course, because it's an island. And the regional flights aren't very expensive either, so it's pretty easy to just jet around to the different islands. But you probably don't want to be doing too much of that. So I do recommend if you're only there for 2 weeks, maybe pick 2 or 3 islands and not try to
Okay.
see like 5 of them. We were
Okay.
there for a month, so we had a lot more time. I still couldn't see everything I wanted to see.
Of course
Um,
not. Just doesn't
uh,
work that way.
yeah.
And
So
it's
they
slow
have
down
Grab
too.
now. They have
Yeah.
Grab, which is the Uber of Indonesia and other countries in Southeast Asia. And so it works the same, really easy, really safe. You don't have all those worries about whether you're getting ripped off because the price um, is designated ahead of time. So we used Grab in the cities. In Flores, once you get out into the further out islands. They didn't have Grab there. We hired a guide with a car, and he took us on a 3-day overland trip, and
Oh.
he made the arrangements for the hotel and
Oh.
things like that. And I let him know the kinds of things I was interested in seeing. So we did a little of everything. We took taxis, and it was
Ferries? There's
ferries.
ferries?
Yep.
Yeah.
I've taken many ferries. There's a fast boat that goes from Bali or Lombok to the Gili Islands, and there are ferries um, there's slow ferries, and I've taken one from Sulawesi to Java. And so in between the islands, you can often take ferries, and especially if there are some of the islands that are really, really close to each other.
Very cool. So this sounds like a big adventure. I think
It
a
is.
month sounds fantastic to me.
Yes.
I just really want to go snorkeling now. I can like literally like smell a snorkel. I can't explain the rubber on it. That sound that
Yeah.
you have.
Yeah.
There's that sound and I'm like, "Oh, man." And then, and it's about the only time I'm quiet,
Yeah. It's a great place
It,
for snorkeling. Hmm.
oh, man, I love this. Well, everyone, again, the link is in the episode notes for Inga's article, and you can also keep up with her at ingasadventures.com. Her book information is all there. Before you go, though, I wanted to ask, so you've been with IFWTWA for a few years now.
Yes.
So what are some of the highlights being a member? Because, we're always saying, hey, anybody who's in the travel tourism industry, even the destinations, jump on board, wineries too. It's really what I love to see is all the networking that happens
Hmm.
amongst members, even travel writers helping each other out, which is cool. What are some of the benefits for you?
Yeah, I was recruited by a friend of mine who's a travel writer, so definitely worked for me. And one of the things I really appreciate about IFTWA is the commitment to craft. And so they
Mm.
have a number of craft sessions that help us learn more about new technology and things like that. And so I find that very valuable. And I've
Mhm.
also gotten a few opportunities, like being on this podcast and being on other podcasts where people are looking for people to be interview. And so I think that's an amazing opportunity. And I haven't been able to take advantage of the trips yet, mostly because I'm already traveling somewhere else. But I always look at them and I always hope that someday I'll be able to join one of the trips. And then being able to post an article on the website is really great also. So lots to offer.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I mean, they've really grown as an organization over
Hmm.
the years, which is wonderful to see. And also their conferences
Hmm.
are fantastic. And I know this year, everyone, it's in Lafayette, Louisiana. So that's going to be fun. We're going to get to go there in winter. I'm hoping to see my gators. I love my alligators. I got to go see them. I won't be eating them though, but I will be looking at them going, "You're so cute." Anyway, it's like the Komodo dragons. You don't want to mess with them.
Are
Do not.
mean.
It's like I've watched some like David Attenborough things on them, and I'm
Oh,
like, because we used to have monitor lizards over in Kenya, and they would whip you with. And you just when you saw one, it's like they're so cool because it is like a living dinosaur, right? Just like
right,
alligators and
right.
crocodiles. I love seeing and snakes and all that. But anyway, I know that freaks people out, but they're beautiful and they are like these ancient beings. But a Komodo dragon to see in the wild and orangutans, that's because orangutans,
Yeah,
there's so few left,
right, right.
which is
Yeah,
sad. But
yeah.
um, from the palm oil industry mostly, I think, and loss of habitat. So to be able
Hmm.
to experience that would be like epic, wouldn't it? I mean, even if there were tens of millions of them, I'd still want to see it, you know.
Yes,
So you don't
yes.
have to lose them to see them. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you on the show and hearing about all these wonderful islands. It just sounds so good. Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, featuring members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. We encourage you to visit their website. We say IFWTWA, which is IFWTWA.org. You can also follow us at bigblendradio.com. Happy travels, everyone!